Hello and a pleasant good morning to all of you, and welcome back to Morning Quest. Welcome back to the Lodge. I see we got some early birds here. Lands the Master, Star Latte, Hyrule Falcone, and Ninja Heather. Good morning, everybody. We got a fun episode today. I say this all the time. It should be a shorter one. I don't have as much to discuss this week as some other weeks, but you guys know I have a tendency to ramble, so this might go on for 45 minutes for all we know. Gemini is here. He says, this is a mood. Song name, it is The Hideaway from Final Fantasy XVI. If you have trouble looking that up, let me know. Somebody here will. Our Turn. It's called Our Terms? Why did I think it was called? Because Hideaway is the first Hideaway theme, and then I thought the second theme was just called The Hideaway. But Our Terms, Lance has got you covered, Gemini. And if you haven't played Final Fantasy XVI, I highly recommend it. Anyway, a lot to talk about in today's episode. We got a ton of stuff for Sonic Shadow Generations. We're going to start off with that. Yoshi-P talked both Final Fantasy IX Remake and Final Fantasy XIV. So definitely going to go over his interview and some of the things he had to say about that. And as always, we got some Dragon Ball Sparking Zero stuff to talk about and cover. I got to say, the marketing for Sparking Zero has been so good. So good. The way they've managed to stay in the conversation for the last month or two, every week having something new to show off, honestly, I was very impressed by. I have some other things I would like to discuss too, but I've got those set up for the back end of today's episode. First things first, I'd like to get us into Sonic Shadow Generations, as I've got to be honest, and we'll talk a little bit about it today. But the stuff they're doing with Sonic Shadow Generations has me more excited for a Sonic game than I've been in a long time. Like a really long time. Like, I was excited for Frontiers, but I went into it sort of expecting disappointment. Just, you know, historically, that's what I've gotten used to as a Sonic fan. But Frontiers was so good. And then seeing the kind of stuff they're putting out for Sonic Shadow Generations, I really think Sonic might have got his groove back. I really think so, guys. But hey, let's watch these trailers. I'm going into this one blind. The next one we watch I've already seen, but let's dive on into these. See for ourselves. What's up, Luz? Good morning. Let's get into this. Is it Luz or is it Luz? Because my grandmother had the same. Her name was spelt the same way, but her name was Luz. Like Lou. Let me know if it's Luz or if it's Lou. It's kind of making me want to play, dude. Like, all I'm going to say is, like, I was ready to never play a Sonic game again. Really. I was ready for that. And they've turned it around. Let's let this rip. Here, let me bring the chat down a little bit. Okay. Let's let this rip. Make sure the volume's not too high. You guys let me know how the volumes are. I'll try and keep this so it'll blow out your eardrums.
It is time to awaken the ultimate life.
What the hell? Oh, okay. 1 second. It's because when I have the stream on, the reason why this happens is I have the Morning Quest stream on, and I keep it at a low resolution as to not override the computer.
Welcome to the world, Shadow the Hedgehog.
The promised time is nigh upon us, Shadow. Soon.
Okay, first things first. Just the way they're combining the lore of both Sonic Adventure 2 and Shadow the Hedgehog and kind of just putting Shadow's full story. Like, it's so good. It's so good.
Black Doom. I destroyed you once. I will do it again. No more mistakes. We'll finish this here and now.
Let's go, dude. Like, come on.
The promised time will arrive once more.
I'll take this power and use it as my own.
I shall put your power to the test.
This time, I will crush every last one of them.
I will say, because, you know, just getting into it a little before I let the trailer keep going, Luz says, I am good. Really enjoyed the podcast last night. I'm glad you did. Glad you did. Got a little bit of a Landy Lodge double feature podcast last night, morning show this morning. The way this game, again, is combining Shadow's lore. I like that they're approaching this in a way that if you really didn't know anything about Shadow or his backstory, playing Sonic Shadow Generations is going to fill you in, which is probably purposeful with the movie coming up. But nonetheless, let's keep it going.
Yes, the warrior that will destroy you.
Dude. Guys, I really got to tell you, I can't remember the last time I was this excited for a Sonic game. Like, don't get me wrong. I know I've been critical of them, but I do like the movies. I do have some big critiques about them. This steals the show. I don't even care about the movie anymore. You know what I mean? I'll go see it. Okay? Don't come at me, Sega. I'm still going to go see it. But my lord. My lord. It takes the cake. It's completely stolen the show. Okay. We got some more Sonic Shadow Generations before I muse on it a little bit more. This one's called Dark Beginnings. And I'll let it speak for itself. Oh, what up, Bio? Good morning, dude. Hope you're good. I'm going to let this trailer speak for itself. Not even a trailer. It's more like a story teaser. Let it roll. Yeah, I guess, take that into consideration. Let me take the chat off. So anybody who's watching, please read this warning. Please read this warning. Okay. Let's keep it going. Morning, gang. What's going on, Tree? How you doing, man? I just want to say, what you're about to watch, outside of a gaming experience, because, again, I thought Sonic Frontiers was very good. Yes, Star Latte, we're buying this day one. I pre-ordered it last night. After I saw what we're about to watch, I pre-ordered this game last night. This is... I'm going to tell you right now. This is the best art direction, the best narrative direction, and the best animation we've seen come from the Sonic the Hedgehog series in a long time. That's not to say Frontiers didn't do any of that well. It most certainly did. I thought Frontiers told a good story. But I'm going to let this speak for itself. This is the coolest thing they've put out in forever. Let's go. M.A. Good morning says, I've watched Dark Beginnings like 3 times and it doesn't get worse. No, it gets better every time I watch it.
Tell that freak to stay away from me! Abe! Shadow?
By the way, for all you FF7 fans out there, notice the parallels between Shadow the Hedgehog and the Soldier program.
Are you alright?
Maria, I'm fine. It's just... the professor created me using alien DNA. The Black Arms, he called them. The same DNA as this larva. This ugly, heartless creature. I may look like a hedgehog, but I'm really no different than this thing.
And you see, the way they faded Maria out and just left him, and little things like that go such a long way.
It's not true. You have a big heart. It may be difficult for you to express it, but I know that deep down, you really do care.
Okay, so some of you might be wondering, why do bitches love Shadow the Hedgehog? Because I don't know if you've noticed this, okay? If you've been on Twitter, if you've been crawling around the internet, specifically its darker corners, bitches love Shadow the Hedgehog. Why? Well, we talk about archetypes a lot on this channel. The Beauty and the Beast archetype is happening right before your eyes. And it works when executed well. It'll work every single time. It's Beauty and the Beast, baby. Tales old as time. Belle and Beast right before you.
About me. About everyone. What you do is what defines you. I know you're having a hard time finding answers, but I'm certain you will one day. Then, you'll find even more people you can trust.
Bitches love Shadow the Hedgehog. Like, no lie, how sick is the combat animation? Come on.
Face me, inferior models.
Evening, handsome. Didn't expect to see you here.
Rouge, what are you doing here?
Just gathering some intel for Gun. I convinced Omega to be my backup. What's your story?
I need a spacecraft to reach the Ark. I have reason to believe the Black Arms have returned.
Well, you're out of luck here. This is just a supply depot. Hold that thought.
I call dibs.
Take it out.
Also, I just want to draw it back a little bit. Hold on.
Take it.
Team Dark, baby. All you Sonic Heroes fans out there, Team Dark. I know there's a lot of Sonic Heroes rumors floating around, but when I see this, and I see Team Dark in action, I have to wonder if it's really coming.
out.
Now about this spacecraft. I can take you to a ship, but in return, you're going to have to promise to come to Sonic's birthday party. I'll take that as a yes. Now then, interested in raiding a gun base?
Okay. It pretty much ends right there. I'll let the credits roll a little bit. Sonic Heroes was it. Sonic Heroes, you know, when it first came out, the game got some tough criticism, but to be fair, it deserved it. You know, Sonic Adventure 2 is a tough act to follow, and there were some choices with Sonic Heroes that I think were questionable. I think the narrative tone, the narrative tone between Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Heroes will give you whiplash. So I know for me, that was always a criticism I had, but as a game, it was a lot of fun to play. Now, honestly, it's so funny because the only criticism I was going to have about this, this clip we watched was I felt that Rouge's voice actor was a little bit too ditzy, but then to see her switch on that sort of femme fatale right at the end here. Here, I'll play it again.
I'll take that as a yes. Now then, interested in raiding a gun base?
So, I will say, completely won me over in the end, and now I kind of like the sort of double-sided Rouge we got in this. So, honestly, won me over. So, look, all things considered, day one buy. I'm willing to give Sonic Shadow Generations a shot. I love Shadow the Hedgehog. You know, you got to give Sega credit to insert a character like that in a series that was going on over a decade, and now for him to be such a crucial part of the series' identity, makes me happy, man. Makes me happy. Okay. So that's going to do it for Sonic and Shadow Generations. Let's move over to... We have a new Sparking Zero trailer, and then we'll get into the Final Fantasy of it all. What do you say, gang? What do you say? We got a short little Dragon Ball trailer, and then we'll get into the Final Fantasy of it all. How are we doing on time? Okay, we got some time. We got time. Let's let it rip. We're very close to release of this game. This is called the Ignite the Spark trailer. I imagine it's designed to really just get people hyped up for the game. Let's let it rip.
This guy's stronger than I thought he'd be.
You can go ahead and die.
Believing in each other, that's what makes us who we are. See you in hell. I need to get my act together.
You know, Dragon Ball fans, they don't talk about it enough. The fact that Trunks is technically the one who killed Frieza, right? A descendant of the Prince Vegeta royal family. I always thought that was cool. I do think, even though like Goku defeating him on Namek is like the peak of the Dragon Ball Z series, Trunks technically being the one to finish the deed, I hope in Super that Vegeta gets the kill, but I doubt it. Amazing. Honestly, It's so funny. I look at Sparking Zero and I go, oh, this has a chance to be the biggest fighting game in the world. And while its giant roster is something to celebrate, I equally think it's something to fear. Because I have no idea how they're going to balance this game. I think it's kind of poetic that Vegeta's Spanish voice actor is Shadow's Spanish voice actor in the movie. You know, that's what people got to understand. Shadow is he's such a representation of the time he's from. You know? That angsty, early, mid-2000s Hot Topic energy. That's what, when I look at Shadow, that's what it brings me back to. Okay, don't want to harp on that one too long. We talk about it quite a lot here. Let's actually bring up our first article. Let's see. Is this going to work in the vertical view? No. So we'll screen cap it. How about that? There we go. Dragon Ball Daima Episode 1, release date and time. So, Dragon Ball Daima is going to release on, if I'm not mistaken, yep, right here. Both in Japan and internationally on October 11th, 2024. So on the same day Sparking Zero is going to get released, Dragon Ball Daima is going to debut. One of the biggest days for the Dragon Ball franchise, and it breaks my heart that Toriyama's not here to see it. And knowing how closely he worked on Daima, because people got to understand, Toriyama, especially in the last 5-10 years, really kind of took a step back. He was still overseeing all of the Dragon Ball stories and stuff, but he really did take a step back. Daima was the first time he really got hands-on in a long time. So, I can't wait to watch the show. I'm glad it's coming out soon. I hope it's better than GT. I hope I like it more than Super. I do really like Super, mind you. So don't get that twisted. But this is cool stuff, man. All right. Let's talk about the Yoshi-P elephant in the room, why don't we? How's this one come out? Okay. I think we're just going to do my screen cap view for the whole episode. Here, let's zoom in a little bit. Give you guys a little easier time to see what I'm seeing. So, for those who do not know, Yoshi-P is one of the big heads over at Creative Studio 3 at Square Enix. He is responsible for overseeing projects like Final Fantasy XVI, Final Fantasy XIV, Final Fantasy XII, Tactics, all that sort of stuff. And in this interview, he talks about a few things. One of the things he talks about is the future of FF14. I definitely want to touch on that a little bit. But more importantly, he talks about the ever-rumored Final Fantasy IX remake. So let's get into it. Let's talk about some of these things he touches on and addresses. Okay. Let's move on to the questions. Okay. Final Fantasy XIV is a huge success. What areas of the game would you like to improve the most? Yoshi says, rather than say in the sense of improving the most, Final Fantasy XIV is an MMO and we are constantly expanding the world. Our main goal for the time being is to incorporate game experiences that players haven't seen before in Final Fantasy XIV. Love you, Yoshi-P. That was a bit of a non-answer. Now, this is going to get into some of the Easter eggs that were in Final Fantasy IX. That were in FF14 for Final Fantasy IX. So, they essentially rebuilt all of Alexandria in Final Fantasy XIV. Which I think some people were almost worried, like, is this what they meant by the leaks? Which, while possible, not probable. But I want to move on to... Here we go. This is a fun one. And this will be the topic of our podcast on Sunday. If you could remake any classic Final Fantasy game, what would you make? Yoshi-P offers that Final Fantasy III ought to be remade. He says, I know there are requests for Final Fantasy IX, but when you think about Final Fantasy IX, it's a game with a huge volume. When you think about all of that volume, I wonder if it's possible to remake that as a single title. It's a difficult one. It is a tough question. So I see why he's leaning on, say, Final Fantasy III as opposed to Final Fantasy IX or 8 or 6, like all these other ones people bring up. Let me make sure I have this on loop. I do. Let's bring this in. Look, I understand this approach at Square Enix, right? We see it with Final Fantasy VII, the way that all of FF7 is being extended into a trilogy. But I'm not going to lie, I'm not buying this. And let me be clear, I like the FF7 trilogy. I'm not buying a lot of these talking points coming out. Because if you notice, they're saying this a lot, right? When asked about FF8, when asked about FF6, when asked about FF9, all these guys are saying, oh, but it's such a big game with massive volume, we'd have to do it into a trilogy. I don't think that's true. I think you could do it in one game. Again, don't get me wrong. I love Final Fantasy VII in this trilogy. But there's a lot of filler and there's a lot of padding. Remake and Rebirth could have easily been one game. Right? Trim out some of the fat. Remake and Rebirth could have easily been one game. And I think if you were willing to give the player an 80-hour RPG, you probably could have done all of FF7 in one game. So when these guys are saying, and I respect them, but when they're saying things like, oh, FF9 is so huge in volume, it needs multiples. 6 is so huge, it needs multiples. 8 is so huge. I don't necessarily agree. I don't necessarily agree. I really think that games like Final Fantasy IX can be done in one swoop. Now, it's not going to be a 40-hour RPG. I will admit you're going to get up to 60, 80, 90 hours if you're going to try and put 6, 8, or 9 into one game. But I think it's worth it. I don't know, man. You could beat OG FF9 in like 30, 35 hours. You tell me if you triple that to an 80, 90-hour RPG, you can't fit the whole volume in there? I don't know. I somehow just don't buy that. However, I do see the appeal of Final Fantasy III, as there is less volume in some of the older, more classic Final Fantasies, as opposed to the PS1 era. But still. Inori says, after watching Zepla, MTQ, Drakness, Savix, Matsui, Sakai, Asmongold, Purple Rod, I can't even pronounce that last one, FF14 YouTube videos, YouTube recommended me your streams. Well, I'm glad they did. I have a deep love for Final Fantasy XIV. It might be my favorite Final Fantasy ever. It might be my favorite video game ever. I don't know. But I've got a deep love of FF14 and a deep love of what these guys do. So, I don't know, man. I definitely understand where they're coming from. That is a big undertaking. But I don't think all these games would need multiple releases. I think FF9, FF8 can fit onto one game. Because again, I understand the desire to sort of flesh these things out and expand on them. But if you follow things beat for beat with a little bit of expansion, you can get it done. You can get it done. Okay. A few more I wanted to touch on here. By the way, I've got this interview in the description if you want to read the whole thing. I'm really just trying to touch on the things I think are most important when it comes to what we discuss on this channel. Let's see. So, another 2-year gap between Dawn Trail and whatever comes next. Honestly, par for the course. Okay. Let me see. One more I think we could touch on. What is the future of Final Fantasy XIV? So my target with FF14 is to have as many players as possible enjoy the game across all devices. So we will continue expanding on this and continue making content and forms of play so that players will be able to enjoy the game. So let's actually hop over. I believe, let's see. This is kind of what he's getting into. So recently they've made a lot of strides to make FF14 more accessible and make it a compatible solo adventure. And FF14 and the team are taking more strides to make it more soloable, which means you won't always need a team of online players to get through the game. They've now done it that you can party up with the NPCs and sort of lead a solo campaign through the dungeons, through the trials, so on and so forth. And forgive me, my voice is a little raspy this morning. So forgive me for that. But that's what mornings are. That's what mornings do. Okay. Again, really good stuff coming from Yoshi-P. I think the FF9 question is interesting. I think it's the worst kept secret at Square Enix right now. I think we could expect to see it eventually. But let's move on. Let me see. What else did I have left? We talked about all of that. Because, yeah, I think making FF14 soloable will be important. But I guess just to cap off the FF9 chat, I hope that if they do remake FF9, that it's not in multiple installments. Because, again, don't get me wrong, I love the FF7 trilogy, but I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want every time a Final Fantasy game gets remade, it's a decade-long venture. For FF7, I'm all for it. But if we're going to go back and remake some of these other games, I don't want to be doing decade-long installments, waiting for it to be fleshed out. So that's just my piece. Will says, Final Fantasy IX set the pace for the 21st century Final Fantasy and deserves more love. 100%. 100%. I think too many people sleep on both FF8 and FF9, but it makes sense when you're sandwiched between 7 and 10. You know? You kind of become the ugly stepsister at that point. All right. I got a couple more things to discuss. Let me see here. How are we doing on time? Okay, we got time. We got time. All right, things are about to get a little spicy in here. I'm not going to lie. Let me make sure. Have we covered all the non-spicy? Have we covered all the non-spicy? We have. Okay. All right, now look. This next topic, I wasn't sure whether or not to discuss it, because it revolves around a series that I have not taken part in. But on the show, we do talk about the greater industry at large. So, did I forget? I might have forgotten to set this up. But we'll see. Anyway, you guys might recall this conversation. We had this conversation on the show a couple weeks back, talking about censorship and how no matter what side of the aisle, no matter what walk of life, no matter what perspective you come from, it's important to stand against it in the gaming industry. Because whether you are a fan of Exhibit A, our beautiful girl Tifa, or whether you are a fan of Exhibit B, Prince Dion and Sir Terrence, the truth is culture can move in a direction that doesn't necessarily agree with you and with what you like. And the next thing you know, you could be left with the game or an experience you love censoring, especially when we see the problems with game preservation and digital ownership, and they could take out something you otherwise liked. For instance, Saudi Arabia asked Square Enix to remove Exhibit B from the game before selling it in their country. Square Enix, rightfully so, said, no, this is the story we're telling, and we're not going to censor it. Now, we're lucky because that's life in 2023. But life in 2053 might be very different, especially when you consider Black Myth Wukong has sold over 20 million copies. A lot of those copies were sold in China, right? So if you don't think every single gaming company is looking at the Chinese market right now, you're crazy. Now, why is the Chinese market significant? Because a lot of things get censored for the Chinese market. For example, the Chinese in China, they don't want blood. If you have blood in your game, you have to spike the rating. Also in China, you're not allowed to show someone unaliving themselves. So for instance, in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the scene with Dyne. In the original, Dyne chooses to unalive himself. But in Rebirth, they changed that. He gets shot down, struck down. A lot of people think, and I'm not saying this is fact, it's purely speculation, but a lot of people think they did that in favor of the Chinese market. Now, that's how censorship can work very subtly, but it also can be rather overt. Hold up, my boy Josh Z just chimed in. Says, I've played 9 more than any other Final Fantasy. He is right. 9 is a much bigger game in scope, with so many castles and other massive locations, 2 at a minimum. But why not just a super long game? If Persona, if Atlas, a studio with a much smaller budget and a much smaller team than Square Enix, can put out 100+ hour RPGs, can't they do that with FF9? Like, I see what you mean, Josh. FF9 is a big game with a lot to offer. But why not just make one big 100-hour RPG? I would be so into it. Anyway, let's get back on topic here. Let's hope so. I think I got the image I wanted to pull up. Here, let's let the Let's let the FF9 of it all run in the background while I pull this up. Okay. Let's go back to here. Give me a second, because I think I have it. Did I forget to punch it in? Okay, 1 second. Let me pull it off my computer. I have an important image I wanted to pull up. Okay. Oh, actually, cancel. I was putting in media source. But again, I think, discussing these kind of things to me is very important, because I fall in love not just with series and franchises, but with an artist's vision, right? Part of what draws me into Kingdom Hearts is Nomura and his vision. So if there were people around trying to censor his vision, I wouldn't be too happy about it. Now, here's what we're going to discuss. I'm going to pull this up right here, right now. Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest. A series I've not personally played, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. Now, there's an interview going around that has since been scrubbed from the internet, but the internet gonna internet, and you can't keep things away from the internet forever. So, let me pull these up in the background. Let me pull those up in the background. Now, guys, there's a reason I bring this up. So, we discussed censorship, Tifa, Dion, and Prince Terrence. Kind of sending out the warning to you guys, this is my message, that no matter what you like, no matter what walk of life you come from, one day that kind of censorship might come for you. Dragon Quest here is a prime example. So on one end, and you know what, before I do this, just to make it clear, give me a second here. The Dragon Quest devs, in a sense, agree with what I'm about to talk about. Now, this interview's been scrubbed. I'll drop a link to it. Somebody else has posted the full thing. But because there was a mistranslation. He used the word Puritan when he meant to use the word like sex or religious education. But that's not the issue here. That mistranslation doesn't negate what was said here. So these guys talked about how doing business with the West can be incredibly frustrating. For instance, in Dragon Quest, you used to be able to choose between a male and female main character, but now you can't choose between a man and woman anymore. We have to label them as type 1 and type 2. Now look, I'm all for inclusivity, guys. I'm all for inclusivity. But if you want to go down this road, it's very easy to point out how stupid it is. Okay? You label the male and female bodies type 1 and type 2. Well, look, you just labeled the female body type 2. What are you saying? That the female body is less than? This is why we used to call them this is why we label them man and woman, or at least what they are. Because if you go type 1, type 1, type 2, or type A, type B, you're insinuating that one is less than the other. That one comes first. One is A tier, one is B tier. Like, if you want to go down this road, you see how sticky all this can get. Nobody was complaining. And again, this isn't enough. By the way, this kind of stuff is not enough for me to boycott a game. Street Fighter did type A, type B. Did not stop me from buying and enjoying the game, nor should this stop you from buying and enjoying Dragon Quest. Let me make that clear. Okay? Let me make that clear. But honestly, I don't know anyone who's complaining about that. And I think they say the same thing. I really wonder who's even complaining about this. Because again, look, I have people in my life from all walks of life, including people who don't identify as simply man or woman. And you know what? They weren't complaining about this. They weren't. Now, let me get into it. Let me tell you why, particularly what took place with Dragon Quest is upsetting to me. Not because I'm a Dragon Quest fan, but because I'm a big Toriyama fan. I'm a very big Toriyama fan, as you guys can tell from watching this show. Now, give me a second. Let me pull the image back up. Let me tell you why this is frustrating. It paints into what I was saying earlier. On the left, you have bikini armor. And if you look carefully, the bikini armor has been censored. Underneath the bikini armor now are tan undergarments and a tan crop top. If you look to the right, the cleric used to have the cross as their symbol. And it's now been switched to the trident. So guess what, guys? Whether you liked Christianity or whether you liked bikini armors, you lose. You lose. Right? Two very different tastes, two very different perspectives. You've got the Christian cross and you've got bikini armor, and both were essentially taken from you. Now, let me tell you why this infuriates me. Because Toriyama has not been dead he's been dead 6 months. We lost him 6 months ago, and they're already revising his work. Maybe now my stance about Nomura and Kingdom Hearts is a little bit clearer. If they censor Kuja and FF9 Remake, I might be out. Lands, exactly. Exactly. Because if you look, it doesn't matter what you're into. It doesn't matter what you like. They're dulling the edges. Oh no, I love both those things. Hey, a lot of people love both those things. There are plenty of people that love Christianity and bikini armor. My point is, even if you like just one, you lose. If you like both, you double lose. Right? Nobody asked for this. Did you see anybody saying, oh man, I'd love to play Dragon Quest III, but that bikini armor is just too much for me, man. Oh, I'd love to play Dragon Quest III, but the cleric's wearing that cross. No one's saying this. And anyone who is saying it isn't a fan of what you're making, isn't a fan of Toriyama's work, isn't a fan of Dragon Quest. Anyway, this is what infuriates me. Toriyama, one of the most influential artists in history. That is not hyperbole. He is one of the most influential and important artists in world history. He's been gone 6 months and they're already altering his stuff. Maybe now my position on Nomura and Kingdom Hearts is a little bit clearer to everybody. This is the stuff that really I can't explain why it infuriates me so much, other than I have such a love for Toriyama and his work. And the idea that they're doing this is just, I don't know. It doesn't look good, too. I mean, the trident to the cross is pretty seamless, but the undergarments under the bikini armor, not only do they look stupid, this is not what Toriyama would have done. We all know that a lot of Toriyama's art can be overtly sexual. That's his artistic expression. And for the people at Square Enix, not the devs, right? We see the devs didn't like this either. But whoever's responsible for doing this, it's ugly. It's very ugly. And here's the thing that should frighten everybody, Lance. Here's the thing that should frighten everybody. The devs don't want to do this. The gamers don't want this. So who wants this? The devs don't want to do it. The gamers don't want it to happen. So who wants this? Who in this industry is pulling strings behind the scenes to make this kind of stuff happen? That's the question we need to start asking. Yes, there are loudmouths on Twitter who claim they want this and yada, yada, yada. But those people don't buy the games. Those people don't buy the games. They don't even buy the games they support. They just like to sound off. The truth is, as far as Dragon Quest fans are concerned, as far as gamers like myself who are sitting on the fence of getting into Dragon Quest, and as far as the devs of Dragon Quest themselves, none of us want this. So who is enforcing this and why? It's time to start asking that question, and it's time for gamers to be vocal about not wanting this in their games. Now look, I don't know what else to say from there. I love Toriyama's work. Seeing them doing this absolutely sickens me. Like the Type 1, Type 2 is just silly to me, but this actually infuriates me way more. Like the Type 1, Type 2 is just, I kind of just shrug and go like, okay, why? I don't understand why. But this is actually what infuriates me. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there. Again, I think it's time to ask who's doing this, who's making, because again, you see they have their frustrations, right? They're saying, like, this is the part that frustrates me, right? Is he has every right to say this. Doing business with such a ridiculous country is really frustrating. But man, us here in the West, the ones who are actually playing your games and interested in your games, we don't want this either, dude. We don't want this either. So just like these guys are speaking up and saying, hey, we didn't want to do this, I think gamers like myself and people in this space, if you feel the way they do, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I didn't want you to have to do that either. And then maybe if we all kind of voice that opinion and make it clear that within this industry and within this space that, this is not something we want. Because again, like, I just want an artist's vision respected. That's all. That's all. And again, it's not just dudes who like bikini armor. Women like women in bikini armor too, right? It looks cool, right? There's a bit of a power fantasy to enjoy there. Now again, like, I of course, anyway, I'm done. I don't need to excuse my opinion. I've said what I need to say. We're wrapping it up today. We're wrapping it up here. Thank you for hanging out, everybody. Lance says, I agree with everything you said, because you're based, Lance. You're based. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. Josh Z, big thanks for that super chat. You guys are awesome. I love doing this show. We're going to wrap it up here. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you all this weekend on a couple live streams. Hoping to do a podcast about Final Fantasy. We'll see. But anyway, thanks for hanging out, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Happy Friday. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other.